Hello, I'm Christine Dunbar with SpeechModification.com about common error patterns in English and how to correct them. We have a weekly Friday question and answer class that you can join us with us as well to find out about the American accent, pronunciation, intonation, and get all of your questions answered about American accent training. Today, I'd like to talk about some of the errors I hear most often in non-native speakers and how to quickly correct them. I'd also like to help you with any pronunciation challenges you have, so we'll look at words that you find difficult or feel unsure of. Feel free to ask questions as we proceed. I'll be watching and monitoring the chat, and I'm setting that up right now so that I can see who's here and what questions you have today. Great, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. So, I'll be checking in with questions as I said. Those of you streaming on YouTube, you can go ahead and ask those questions in the chat. Often in our accent training classes, we look at accent patterns. We've talked about voicing errors, we've talked about systemic errors on certain sounds, we've talked about intonation patterns. Today, I'd like to take a new approach, and I'd like to look at some specific common everyday words that we frequently use and the error patterns that you may have on those words. It'll be a way of examining the error patterns more specifically and getting you some really concrete help that you can use right away to make sure that you're saying these common everyday words in English correctly. So you can find out about the error patterns that you might have based on your native language by going to my store page. I'm going to put that in the chat for you right now. If you haven't already, this is a great idea to go and to get the free download in order to see what elements of, there it is in the downloads, in order to look at your native language and how it affects how you speak English. As we've said many times before, your accent will act as a filter on what you hear, as well as how you pronounce. And so you have a sound system that you learned from your first language, and it affects everything that you do. So if you go to my store page, you can get a free download, look at some typical accent error patterns. You might even want to check that out now so that you can follow along. I'll be referring to those as we go through class. So let's talk about one simple error that I hear very frequently on a very important word in English, and that's the word no. Many times, I will hear a non-native speaker of English use a nice, pure O vowel on no. It sounds like this. No, no. They're using the O that's in their native language. It's one sound, O. In American English, our O is actually two sounds. We say no, no. We slide from the O vowel to the O vowel, like in book, no. So what you may find is that if you use your native language O and you do a nice short pure O, no, to the American listener that actually sounds a little bit rude or short or like you're angry with them. And so in order to correct this error, you really want to try to lengthen your O. You don't have to think so much about sliding from one vowel to another. Just try holding it longer. No. Let's take a look at that O sound. And I'll show you an example. And that is the Spanish vowel. Here's the vowel O. See how it's one sound? And in American English, we glide from O to U. If we look at the Spanish vowels and the American English vowels together, you'll see, you're going to probably, when you're trying to say the American English vowel, just say this vowel, O. Another vowel that does that is A. In American English, we glide from A to I, A. But you may just say A. That means that when you're saying a word like name, it might sound like nem, rather than name. So check this out. You can find it in my free online practice. I have some links to American vowels. That's a good place to get started. Let's talk about another word. This is a word I just published a video for, just uploaded a video this week, and that's this word here. Common word, we use it a lot. Why don't you say that word for me? I'm listening. I can't really hear you. But you, by chance, may have said this word like the word say. In the word say, we have the A vowel. But in the word says, we actually have the vowel that's in the word red tent. So our anchor for is red tent. So we don't want to say says, we want to say says, says. This is a common error. Say it with me. Rather than says, try says. This is an example where spelling leads us astray. So vowel sounds are spelled many, many different ways in English. It's very misleading to see an A in the word and to think it might say A, when really it says the vowel we associate with letter E, the vowel. Some other examples of that, we have the word any and the word again, again and any. Those are both vowel even though it's spelled with an A. Not very common, but these are important words to know. In addition, when we think about the letter A, we did a class recently on all the classes. Come on in. Hi, come on in. I've just started, I have YouTube viewers are watching as well, so I'm glad you can come in to have a seat. So we were just talking about vowel sounds in English, and the idea for today's class, you're here for the American accent class?
No, we're in the wrong class.
Okay.
Sorry.
What were you looking for?
It was called Coding for Medicine.
Oh, it's probably in the big meeting room next door.
Okay.
That's okay. All right, so I'm live at the Sammamish Library, and I had some people come in, but they were in the wrong class. So sorry for the interruption. So we're looking at vowel sounds in English, and so let's look at that letter A. So when we see the letter A, we think, we think of the A sound like in say, but it can also be the sound like we saw in says. It can be the schwa, the sound, like in above. It can be the sound, like in at. And it can be many other sounds. So I do have some recent videos, some recent live classes where we talked about vowel sounds and spelling for letter A, for letter O, for some of the other sounds. Those might be useful for you in thinking about, you need to learn the sound in the word rather than relying on spelling to help you. Okay, so let's look at some more common words that you may be mispronouncing, you may need help with. Okay, and Pascal has a question. I'm going to pause and take that. He says, how to say exam? The A sound before an M sound is not a pure A sound, right? Actually, exam, am, in that word I do say the same just as am, I am. So you do want that vowel A. So exam is exam. So yeah, that's vowel A. It's the same as if I were saying I am taking an exam, am. Good question. Thank you, Pascal. Please feel free to ask other questions as we continue. So let's talk about the word, one more thing about the word says. This is another pattern at the end of that word. When I say says, not only do I have to pay attention to the vowel and be careful not to say an A vowel, say the vowel, I also, this letter S in this word actually says the Z sound. Says, not ses. So saying S, the S sound for Z sound is a very common pattern. Many, many words, in fact, most of the words that in English that are spelled with letter S at the end of the word actually have the Z sound. Some examples: was, is, does, and also words that are spelled with SE at the end, like those and these. For these words, if you're unsure which sound you hear in the dictionary, you hear in the word, I recommend looking in an online dictionary. And I'm going to give you a link to an online dictionary, or to a blog post I have about the online dictionary that I like. I'll put that in the chat for you. And because what I find is that when you use the dictionary, you can look at the symbol, and you can see in the IPA, in the little explanation of pronunciation, if the word is spelled with an S, and it has an S sound, like yes or us, you'll see the letter S. If it's a Z sound, you'll see the letter Z. So if I look up was in the online dictionary, I'm not going to see an S. I'm going to see a W. I'm going to see the correct vowel schwa, and a Z. So that can be very useful. And, you may not know all of these symbols right away. You may not know the vowels. I do recommend beginning to learn them, and you can do that with my online courses and on my free practice. But you certainly can tell the difference between an S and a Z in a dictionary entry and use that to help you know that words like was, is, eyes, those, and many, many other common words end with the Z sound. So check that out. That pattern is called devoicing. And what devoicing means is that the S sound and the Z sound, I make them the exact same way in the mouth. So when I say S, and I say Z, Z, the only thing that changes is that my voice has to be on for the Z sound. If I feel my mouth, S, Z, nothing changes here at all. I'm using the exact same articulatory positions of the tongue, the lips, the teeth. The only thing I'm changing is turning my voice on. So there are other sounds that follow these patterns as well. Another common one is the V sound. So the V at ends of words, many times people will accidentally say the F sound. So F is voiceless, V is voiced. So here's a common word, and it's actually the, I believe, second most commonly used word in English. It's the word of. Of. What usually happens, the error I usually hear on this word, is that people say that F because they see the letter F. This word is a very strange word in terms of spelling. It's an exception to the rule. We actually say this word of, vowel schwa, and a voiced sound, of. Other words that might have that devoicing pattern, give, sometimes I hear gif, leave, sometimes I hear leaf, or have, sometimes I hear half. So note that of is an exception. Even though it's spelled with F, we pronounce it with the sound v, of. Good. And also, even though there's an O in that word, we spell it, the sound is the vowel schwa, the sound. Good. As long as we're talking about the most frequently used words in English, let's talk about the most frequently used word, which is the word the. The symbols for the are the voice TH and vowel schwa. Many times I hear people pronounce this word as the, but the only time we use the sounds the, which is the E sound, the only time we use the is when it's followed by a word that begins with a vowel. So I do say the air, the egg, the apple, but the rest of the time I need to say the. So watch out for that and try making sure that you're saying this word, the most commonly used word in English, correctly with the vowel schwa, the. The other time I say the is when I'm talking about something very specific and I'm trying to stress the word the. So an example might be the president is in town. The president is in town. So I'm highlighting the one and only. Then I use the. Most of the time you want to use the. Another similar example, the third most commonly used word in English, a. Many times I hear people try to say this word as a because it's spelled with letter A. It's actually the sound. It's never stressed. We never say it by itself. So practice a few words with me. Try a class, a lesson, a computer, a tree. We never want to say a, we always want to say a. Very good. Okay, another example of a very commonly used word that I often hear mispronounced is the word today. Again, vowel schwa is important here. Even though we spell that with the letter O, we don't say a letter O or an oo sound in this word. We don't say today, I'm teaching a class. We actually say today. Today. So try that with me, today. You can hear how that sounds more American. You may be saying today, tomorrow, tonight. Try to change over to the American pattern of today, tomorrow, tonight. In the word to, like to go, to eat, to sleep, it is correct to say to. I need to go, I need to eat, but very frequently in English, this word is unstressed and Americans reduce it to ta. I need to go, I need to eat, I need to sleep, I need to talk to you. So this is an example of a reduction that you can use to sound more American. You can see more examples of these types of reductions and linking in my reductions and linking playlist, and also on my Real Talk playlist that really helps you listen and compare the written word to the spoken word in fluent American English. So I suggest you check out those. The words to and to, I'm too busy, it's too hot. On those words, we do use the oo vowel. I have two ways of pronouncing to. So all three of these words are homophones, to, and to. But this one is the one that gets changed and reduced to go, today. Whereas I never reduce this. It's too much. I have two of them. I would never say I have t of them or it's too much. So that's another way you can tell if you have trouble knowing which to use in writing. You can listen, and if you're hearing it, you can listen for the t, the reduced sound in this shorter, less important, unstressed word. Great. Okay. Speaking of word stress, let's talk a little bit about stressing words and intonation and some of the patterns we hear there for problematic speech. Homophones means, good question, words that sound the same but have different meaning and different spelling. So to, and to was one example. And some other words that sound the same, blue and blue. They both have the exact same pronunciation, which is blue, but they have different meaning. I have a blue shirt. The wind blew very hard. So that's what homophones are. Good question. I do have a playlist about homophones. I have a few examples on there, a video about one and one, and some others. And I'll be adding more in the future, since many times people ask me what's the difference in pronunciation between those words. And in a homophone, there is no difference in pronunciation, only a difference in meaning. Great question. Okay, so let's look a little bit at one intonation pattern that I frequently hear that people use the incorrect word stress, and it can be poorly received by American listeners. And this is when you're saying, I don't know. In American English, our typical stress would be to stress the word no. That means that we're going to lengthen on the word no, we're going to hold it longer, and we may do a little bit of a pitch change, like this. I don't know. What I hear very frequently from non-native speakers is they stress the word don't. I don't know. The problem there is it sounds like you're contradicting someone. It's as if I said to you, you know, and you said, no, I don't know. Because if I'm stressing don't, I'm changing the basic meaning of the sentence. In sentence stress, we stress the last content word in a phrase. You can learn about this on my intonation playlist in more detail, but for now, I just want you to try this phrase, I don't know. You're going to go up and pitch, I don't know. Good. You want to try to avoid I don't know? Try I don't know. Excellent. Another type of error pattern that we talked about in Friday's class was when people see a written word and they add extra syllables to the word because of the way it's spelled. So one example of that is the word different. You see the word differ in this word different, and you might think it should be pronounced different with 3 syllables. Different. But that's incorrect. It's actually pronounced like this. Different. There's only 2 syllables in the word. We don't actually pronounce this syllable. So try that. Different. Different. That's true on some other words like interest, interesting, vegetable, several, basically. You can watch Friday's replay of Friday's live class to hear more about those words, or I do have a link on my online practice where I've listed out many of the words where that happens, and I've shown you the correct pronunciation. What I suggest for these words, in order to help yourself correct the pronunciation, if you find, oh yeah, I say vegetable instead of vegetable, what you can do to begin working on changing is that when you write the word vegetable and you're going to practice, write it out the way we actually say it. Vegetable, with just 3 sounds. Vegetable. And then your brain will begin to see and change its association. When we see the written word, the way we normally pronounce it, our habitual pronunciation is stored there. If I see this and I'm reading it, I might say vegetable, if that's my habit. To change that, if I write vegetable and then read this way, vegetable, vegetable, then I may be able to change that pattern and eliminate that error of accidentally adding an extra syllable to the word. You can see more examples of that, as I said, on my free online practice. You can see some of the typical words that we see that with, including words like typically, basically, where we have an A-L-L-Y at the end, but we only say L-Y. So I don't say basically, I say basically. One more intonation and stress-related error that I often hear is that there are some words where people mispronounce the word, not because they're saying any sounds in the word incorrectly, but they're stressing the incorrect syllable. So a frequent one that I hear is the word myself. On the word myself, we want to stress the syllable self. And I'll often hear people saying myself instead of myself. And again, you may want to underline the self, listen, imitate, hear it from the online dictionary, hear them say myself, and then try saying myself. If you are trying that and you still can tell that you're saying myself, maybe use something to help you get the pitch higher on the second syllable. So you can use your hand, it'll help you with your voice. Try myself, myself. I can do it myself. That way you're really going to be able to lengthen and stretch and stress on that second syllable self. That's something also that you can see in the dictionary. In today's online practice, I have a link for an exercise showing you how to look up syllable stress in the dictionary. So in the dictionary, you'll see that word myself. You'll see the pronunciation help. Myself. And then you'll see there's a little mark, a little stress mark. They put that before the syllable that gets stressed. So myself. Here's another example. Often I hear people say this word programmer. Some people who say programmer, even some people who are programmers, make the mistake of saying programmer rather than programmer. And so in the dictionary you'll see that like this. Programmer. And you'll see that they have the stress here. Programmer. So that can be a little bit hard to see and understand in the dictionary. I recommend using my courses and my free online practice to help identify some additional words. What I have for you on there is words that are commonly used that are sorted by syllable stress. So you can go through and practice words like different, interesting, that all have first syllable stress, and then words like myself, and other words that have second syllable stress, and check and see if you're pronouncing those correctly. The online dictionary is also helpful because you can listen to and imitate the word, and that's going to be the best way. You know, if you see a little line in a word, it may not have a lot of meaning for you. If you hear it and repeat it, and begin to get that sound, that pattern in your head of the word by hearing a native speaker say it, that's going to be helpful for you. Yes, Simon says that it's annoying to check the dictionary when learning a large chunk of vocabulary. When you're learning a lot of new words at once, if you can take note, if you're hearing them, if you have an opportunity to listen to them, and you can think about where you hear the stress, you want to learn it with the correct stress pattern right away. If you're learning them from reading, it's more difficult. There are a few patterns and tendencies in longer words. For example, words that end with ation, the stress is usually on the A, like organization, manipulation. So you can begin to learn some patterns. But as I said before, I do recommend looking at my website for the most frequently used words in English and those patterns. And as you're acquiring new words, maybe begin to create your own list of all of these words have first syllable stress, all of these words have second syllable stress. And then if you learn it from the beginning with the correct syllable stress, you'll be in better shape. Many times people are already pronouncing these words correctly, but it is oftentimes when people learn a word through reading or through a book, as opposed to through hearing it, that they can get an incorrect stress pattern. The other reason that people have an incorrect stress pattern on words is oftentimes if they have a similar word or almost the same word in their own language, if it has a different stress pattern in their native language, then they're going to probably use that stress pattern when they're saying the word in English rather than the English stress pattern. So a good question, and unfortunately there's no, as far as I know, great resource for all of words out there besides a dictionary. But you may find that your instinct is correct on syllable stress on many of the words. So I wish you the best of luck with that. All right, so if you have any additional questions, I'd be happy to take them. I will be talking about many of these words and similar words in my upcoming videos. I have a new playlist which is called Say This, Not That, and the videos are very short, usually about 30 seconds, where I say the correct version of the word, I warn you about the incorrect pronunciation, and I give you the reason why, to say why the pronunciation is incorrect in the pattern that you may be using. So check those out on my channel question and answer class. We'll go back to a new format. Yes, often. I do hear people in the US say often as well, but that's an incorrect pronunciation. The T in often is silent. And so that's maybe a dialect difference for different Englishes in different areas of the world. And again, it's a pattern that I hear sometimes in the US, but usually it's incorrect. So try often. There's no difference between those two words. They mean the same, but often do it. Speechmodification.com.